Hi everyone, I'm back with another edition of the American Chess Magazine puzzle calendar after playing in Vegas for the National Open. Let's get into the puzzle. This is the puzzle for Monday, June 19th. It was composed by Ernst Bachel in the year 1960. Again, all the puzzles in this series are white to move, mate in 2. If you want to try to solve this puzzle for yourself, then go ahead and pause the video here. For me, this puzzle had a difficulty rating of 4 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 4.5 out of 5. So here, black's king is very trapped, but all of white's checks fail in some way. Knight c5 check is obviously hanging, and the other very obvious check is knight f2 check. This one was the one I gravitated more towards simply because black only has one legal move, and that's to capture the bishop. So if white is able to guard the bishop on the first turn, then knight f2 will easily be mate. I first thought king c1 just directly guarding the bishop, but of course this fails to b2 check, and obviously white cannot respond with checkmate. Therefore, I realized that the best solution for white is actually to move this bishop away. However, the bishop has so many squares, how do you know which one is the correct answer? Well, I used the process of elimination for this one. Bishop g5, bishop e3 and bishop f4, not bishop f4 actually. These two are both pretty sad because black can just take them immediately, and after takes, the king can still run to d2. The bishop is no longer controlling this square. If bishop to f4, this also does not work because knight takes f4, and the king can run to e3 since the knight on d5 was originally guarding this square. So far we've eliminated 3 of these. So here, white only has 3 other candidate moves that actually make sense. Bishop h6, bishop e1, and bishop c1. Now, I couldn't really find the difference between these moves for a long time. All of them look like, oh, I'm going to, play knight f2, and it's hard to stop. If bishop e2, knight f2 is still checkmate. Black has no way to guard this square and no way to run the king. But then I finally realized that black's only defense is to play the move knight e5. Now this move defense took me a bit of time to find, and I think that's where the main difficulty of this puzzle lies in. However, once you see that knight e5, now if knight f2, the king can run to e2, the rook is being blocked, then this unlocks a lot of possibilities. So now we know that bishop e1 doesn't work because of knight e5. Now, what about the other two? Now, bishop h6, this one unfortunately also does not work because of knight e5. Now, if knight f2, the king again runs to e2. And if knight f4, the king runs to e3. Now, in bishop e1 against knight e5, knight f4 check also does not work because of king to e3. Therefore, white's bishop needs to go to a square that controls e3 without getting blocked after knight f4. And obviously, the only way to do that is to play bishop to c1. Now white is still threatening knight f2, and there are still no defenses for black, other than to try to play knight e5 or knight e7, both of which fail to knight f2 checkmate, knight f4 checkmate, sorry, because here knight f2 again does not work because of king to e2, and therefore your only option is to play knight f4. The key difference is that the bishop on c1 controls this e3 square, even though because on h6, for example, it'd get blocked by its own knight. This is the puzzle for Tuesday, June 20th. It was composed by Albertus Koldejik in the year 1940. Again, if you want to solve this puzzle for yourself, go ahead and pause the video here. For me, this puzzle had a difficulty rating of 3 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 5 out of 5. So here, black's only threat is to play king to b6, running the king away. Now, this is very problematic for white because after the king runs here, it can run to a7 again. For example, if white starts with b5, and then bishop g1, unfortunately, black can just block with d4, and there's no mate in 2. So therefore, white has to find a way to control this b6 square. Bishop g1 on the first move looks very hopeful, with the idea that now, for example, if black tries to play something like d takes e4, then white is always threatening knight to a5. White is also threatening b5 checkmate. If black tries to play d4 blocking the diagonal, then white has queen to c5. However, black has 2 defenses, the simplest of which is simply bishop takes e5. Bishop takes e5 is taking the queen away. Now the king can run to d6, and it's not mate in 2 anymore. The only other way to guard the b6 square is to play queen to d4. Now, even though black has a lot of defenses, none of them work. First of all, if black does absolutely nothing, then white is threatening queen c5. If the king runs to d6, then queen c5 is checkmate anyway. If black tries to guard this square with bishop to f2, then white has the option of playing b5 checkmate because the bishop is recontrolling this d6 escape square. If black tries to play queen d6 with the idea of pinning the b pawn to the king, not allowing b5 checkmate, white has knight a5 checkmate. And the most challenging defense if black plays bishop to d6, pinning the b pawn and pinning the knight. then here luckily white has the option of e takes d5 checkmate. This is the puzzle for today, June 21st. It was composed by Arturo Cara in the year 1921. Again, if you want to solve this puzzle for yourself, then go ahead and pause the video here. For me, this puzzle had a difficulty rating of 7 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 5 out of 5. So, for some reason, it took me a really long time to figure out that queen d8 isn't just mate in 1. Unfortunately, black can play bishop takes d8, and then white goes off and cries. But, so here, the problem is that this bishop controls this d8 square, and it's hard to see how else white can give a check. Bishop c3 or something is just sad, because knight takes c3. King c8 supporting queen to d7 looks kind of hopeful until you see knight a7 check. So it's hard to see how white can generate a new check. Also, knight f5 fails to rook takes f5. But then you realize that all of these things are kind of hanging on a thread. And what's really interesting here is that this rook guards e6, this rook guards e5, this bishop guards d8. And once you draw out all the arrows, you kind of realize, oh my gosh, they're intersecting each other. What I mean by that is black doesn't actually have any waiting moves with the rooks. If the rook moves to f6, for example, then it blocks the bishop from controlling d8. If this rook moves to g5, then same thing. But these rooks need to stay on their ranks because they are guarding important mating squares. Also, this knight cannot move because, again, it would block the bishop. So I realized that the only piece of black's that can move is the knight on b5. And this knight controls the c7 square. Therefore, the obvious thing to do is to threaten mate on that square. But wait, white already is. So if the knight moves right now, then bishop c7 is actually checkmate. And so if you look carefully at this position, what you'll eventually realize is that black has no moves that would safely pass the turn. So all white has to do is pass the turn by themselves. And the easiest way to do that without messing anything up is to move queen to c8. White is still threatening queen e6, still threatening knight f5. And the only extra thing that this move allows is some maybe king to e7. We'll get into that later. First, notice that if the knight moves, then white has queen to c7 checkmate. And if the rook moves here, then queen d8 is mate. If the rook moves here, then queen d8 is still mate. If this rook moves off this rank, then white has queen e6 checkmate. And if the knight moves or something, this would still block the bishop. So therefore, black's only option is to play king to e7. However, here white has queen d8 checkmate because the king actually has blocked the bishop as well. So those are the puzzles for this half week. Aside from the last puzzle, I know that these weren't exactly the most difficult puzzles, but this video is still a bit longer than normal because I received yet another tip which said to present the puzzle slower. So now I'm trying to actually say my thoughts aloud and explain them in a comprehensible manner instead of going rapid machine gun mode. But yeah, I hope you guys like this format better. That's it. As always, if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. And that's all for today. Bye.